name of Mercurial mercenaries! Just in a continuation of the time wasting, this is part 2 of the greatest albums of all time. Look, thank you very much, everyone who participated in the first video. I appreciate it. I always say this, and it always sounds insincere, but I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Because comments make prizes. What do comments make? They make prizes. So, here's the video. And here's some of your comments. I thought I'd just go through some of them. Why not? HK says, Radiohead, Floyd, the Beatles were understandably there, but I wish somebody else more current had recorded something truly magnificent. And I just say in my reply that I think bands out there are recording magnificent things right now. And I know I keep banging on about them only because I listened to it recently, but there are magnificent albums out there right now. But I think, remember, this is an amalgamation. Sounds like a filling this time I'm saying it. An amalgamation of all these different best of charts. And some of these bands just haven't got a chance at the moment. But, like you've said yourselves, OK Computer, the minute it was released, started figuring high in the charts. And because of that, even though it's one of the most recently released album in that top 10, it went to #1. Vito Pereira saying cheers from Brazil. Cheers from England. Cheers from England. Julino, do you think that naming one's favourite is an expression of one's personal bias and that the selection of best album of all time may be reliant on how one chooses to measure success? Would the result be different if the music of the whole world were included in this little exercise, or should we just stick with what we're familiar with? I think this is an amalgamation of thousands of best of charts, and I think it does include the music of the whole world. And I think once you start including chart after chart after chart after chart, it kind of in some ways negates personal bias. Although I suppose it is interesting also that OK Computer and Dark Side of the Moon do come at the top of the charts. Maybe it's because they are the best albums of all time. They have been decided upon, on average, on chart after chart after chart after chart, as being the best albums of all time. You say yourself here. The album I've listened to lately the most would probably not appear on such a list, Encounters by Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster. And then Josh pipes up and says, actually, Julino, that album you just mentioned is on the list. It's the 7,629th best album of all time. And the 158th best album of the 50s. It does account. These charts do account for taste. But I suppose, well, we're going to touch on it in a minute with a comment that Explosive Notes makes. So we'll go back to that one. HK is complimenting me on achieving 500 subs. Actually, my subs are on the way back down again now. This morning I had 499. Now I see I've got 495. So 4 people have unsubscribed from me this morning. I must just say, I'm recovering from food poisoning. I came down with food poisoning yesterday. I've been on a bit of a kind of diet recently, and I bought a salad from the shop. You know, a boxed salad. And I ate this boxed salad, and I had the most incredible food poisoning yesterday afternoon, and all night I was bedridden. And I got up this morning, and I'm trying to get over it best I can. So just bear with me. I'm not my usual bouncing self. Anyway, 4 people have unsubscribed. Have pity on me. Mr. Floyd says, would never place Abbey Road above Revolver, despite having I Want You and 2 of George's greatest songs. Perhaps you've just said yourself why there is a case to put it above Revolver. Sgt. Pepper's is a great album and was a shock to the listening audience, but better than Revolver? Really not sure. You know, certainly a matter of taste. Certainly a matter of taste. I think you agree with me that there's certainly a case for saying the word certainly, overusing the word certainly. There's certainly a case for Sgt. Pepper and Revolver being up there somewhere. And then we're quibbling, aren't we? I think I agree with you. Revolver's got something. But we're quibbling there. When you say, what was this chart? And where did Nick Drake and John Martin come? You'll probably find that Nick Drake and John Martin... Let's have a look. Nick Drake. Pink Moon is his top ranking album. I think you'd agree with me on that, Podrick. They've got that right, haven't they? Pink Moon's his highest ranking album, and Pink Moon, the overall rank for Pink Moon is 61. See? It's the 61st greatest album ever recorded. And it ranks as the 3rd best album recorded in 1972, and it ranks as the 17th best album of the 70s. So it's not like Nick Drake. I think this is a pretty good chart. I was like you, skeptical when I loaded this site up, because I thought it's not gonna take into account my tastes. It's not going to take into account Iron Maiden and Nick Drake and Jeff Buckley, but they're there. I was just showing the top 10s, but they're there. And I think to say that Pink Moon is the 61st greatest album of all time that's giving a huge amount of respect to Nick Drake, and I think he'd be reasonably happy with that. Mr. Ford, you said here, out of interest, what is it about Abbey Road? I've always believed it to be one of those many albums in these lists that is a favourite of people who have never listened to these albums. I don't know. I did a review of Abbey Road a few years back, and I remember being pleasantly surprised. That medley on side B, it's quite astounding. There's so much chucked in there, and like I've said to you in my reply, there's something about the production sound of it. It's just magnificent and warm, and it's introducing the 70s. I know it's the 60s, but it's kind of introducing, it's opening the doors to the 70s. And along with that iconic cover, I can see why people pick Abbey Road. And I think once you're talking about Sgt. Pepper, Revolver, Rubber Soul and Abbey Road and the White Album, you're splitting hairs in a way, aren't you? Newman Ultra Microscopic Civic Volcanoiosis. Good job, Perfect 10 doesn't watch my videos. Very good job. She's never watched a single video ever. It's a good job. It is a good job. Fishy Paw says, greatest is an ambiguous term. If it's purely sales, then Thriller is number 1. It's not purely sales. Other than that, it comes down to individual taste. That's the point of the charts. The thousands and thousands of charts that have been amalgamated together. Thousands of people's individual tastes writing for magazines like Rolling Stone, Billboard, whatever, Q, Select, NME, Melody Maker, The Sun, The Mirror, whatever. So it is about individual taste, but about many individual tastes to the point where you get thousands and thousands and thousands. It has to average out at some point. And bear in mind, the Pixies were coming at number 1 in these charts. Joy Division were featuring. Cure were featuring. I think we were all, because I include myself in this a little bit, we were all being a little bit prejudiced about what these charts would show. And we were all naturally assuming that Thriller was going to be at number 1 in the 80s. Weren't we? For me, Dark Side of the Moon has to be number 1, with probably Zepp 2 second. Well, there you go. Dark Side of the Moon was there or thereabouts, wasn't it? Explosive Notes. Explosive Notes and I disagree about everything. Greatest album of all time. I didn't even attempt to guess what those charts would say. As I stopped, he didn't even attempt to guess. He didn't even attempt to guess. Didn't play the game. I didn't even attempt to guess what those charts would say, as I stopped caring about those when Kelly Family, don't know who they are, were number 1 here for almost a year. Anyway, I thought about how those charts would look if I put them together, and honestly, I can't do it. I think you've been prejudiced a little bit there. You've naturally assumed that NSYNC and the Spice Girls and all these, and Thriller and all these albums would feature in the top spot. When you've got the likes of the Pixies and, like I said, Joy Division and that, your music, our music, my Iron Maiden, it does feature. Perhaps not in the top 10, but it does feature. Let's take, for example, Clawfinger. I remember watching Clawfinger live. I think I've said this to you before. I watched Clawfinger live at a sweaty little club in the early 90s. Do this! Now, bear in mind, honest to God, I haven't listened to Clawfinger for 20 years. I actually tried to find the song I'm about to sing on a streaming service. It's not even on there. But it went something like this. Do this! Do that! Come here, you twat. Let's take, for example, Clawfinger, Use Your Brain versus Beastie Boys, Ill Communication. I just can't put one of them above the other. They're both top orgasmic brilliance. What if you did, though? That's the thing with these charts. I agree with you. I can't really put... I think I said to you probably in my reply. I did, in my reply. How do you... In reality, how do you actually determine whether Nick Drake's Pink Moon is better or worse than Jeff Buckley's Grace? You can't. Let's face it, you can't. But if you have to, if I tell you have to produce a top 10, and you're not allowed to say, I didn't even attempt to do it, or I stopped caring, or I'm not going to. If I forced you, if I put a gun to your head and told you you've got to come up with a top 10, you could do it. You could do it. If you had to, you could put Clawfinger or Beastie Boys one above the other. If you had to. By that example, even limitation by decade is out of the window for me. So I thought, let's try some single year. 86 popped in mind. Slayer, Rain in Blood. Yeah, I can do that. Then I remembered Sick of It All. Out the same year. And Motorhead. So maybe even per year would be too short. I understand where you're coming from. But again, if you're writing for the NME or Rolling Stone or whatever, and you've got to put a list together, you could probably do it. Even if you ended up splitting hairs, even if you put Slayer at number 1 and Sick of It All at number 2, but in your head you really think they're much of a muchness and they could both take the number 1 spot, you could probably... I mean, I agree. I mean, Slayer, Rain in Blood, what an album. What the hell? Put it at number 1. Just make a decision, man. Out of interest, let's just see where Slayer did come. You say it was 1986. Let's just go to 1986 a minute. Hang on. 1986. There's the 80s. Let's go to 86. 1986. So, 1986, the best albums of 1986, according to thousands and thousands of people's opinions, and they're not just the general public, they are people who care. They said The Queen is Dead was at number 1, Master of Puppets, Graceland, So, License to Ill, Skylarking, Life's Rich Pageant, Rain in Blood. Rain in Blood and License to Ill are both in the top 10 for 1986. So they do feature. And Rain in Blood has an overall rank as of the 447th best album of all time. Out of all the music ever created, they've still, the populace have still awarded Rain in Blood by Slayer 447. I think you're being a little bit, dare I say, a little bit negative about the whole idea of labelling and giving value to music. And that was a very long demonstration why I don't really care about music charts. Look, I don't care about music charts, but they are interesting. And you've said that, to be fair to you, you've said it's interesting to look at, definitely, don't get me wrong. So you are agreeing with me. But to me personally, even the most accurate chart of how much people like albums doesn't represent anything useful. I think it does. I think it does represent something useful. I found it useful to find out that people really do value Disintegration by The Cure above Thriller by Michael Jackson. Like you say, it doesn't matter. But there's me constantly thinking that people don't value art. They're just in it for the quick bang, the quick buck. And yet an album as twistedly difficult as Disintegration by The Cure still figures. I do value it. I do value it. You've said The Exploited Massacre can't be found on that website at all. I'm not sure. I take it you've checked. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. Explosive Notes. I don't know. I suppose it doesn't help that I don't know Exploited. They're a punk band, aren't they? I can picture their album covers. Black. Yeah, that one. I think I've seen that one. The Massacre. Oh, sorry, that's not the chart. Here we go. No, you're right. So you have checked. You have checked. At least you've gone on here and had a little look. No, you're right. You're right. The Exploited Massacre doesn't even have a rank. So what that means is, out of all the thousands of best of charts, of the best albums of all time, no music writer has ever put The Exploited Massacre into that top 100. Dare I say, maybe it's not one of the 100 greatest albums of all time. But you think it is, which is fine. Which is fine. Not a problem. I do understand where you're coming from. I just thought it'd be interesting just to talk about it. HK, the most cherished album I have is Number of the Beast. I agree, I love Number of the Beast. What an album. I do struggle. You've probably done the same as me, trying to think of what the greatest Iron Maiden album is. It is tricky, and especially when you talk about album covers. Some of the greatest artwork. For me, it's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. That's the one I'll take to the desert island. But I agree with Number of the Beast. I think it actually, what was Number of the Beast? That was 1982, wasn't it, Number of the Beast? I'm pretty sure Number of the Beast was 1982. Let's just see where Number of the Beast figured in 1982. If it figured at all. 1982! But there you go. 1982. The best album of 1982 was Thriller. And the second best album of 1982 was Number of the Beast. I think, as far as charts go, and I often say that charts don't represent me as a person, because I think, you know, is a chart produced by the masses going to feature Judas Priest's Painkiller? Probably not. But I think I'm underestimating the will of the masses, because the will of the masses really like the Number of the Beast. Out of interest, Painkiller was 89, wasn't it? Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance, is considered their best album, and it was the 19th best album of 1982. The 1136th greatest album of all time. Painkiller was the 20th best album of 1990. Oh, it wasn't 89, it was 90. That's not bad, is it? It's figuring. It's figuring in the chart. The 20th best album of 1990. I'm sure Rob Halford would take that. And party. Podry. New York's actually a new version of New Amsterdam. I know. But you know these English towns weren't recreated like the theme parks. Yeah, I do know that. Yeah. But I still say that, are we saying that New York isn't named after York, the place? Or maybe it's named after the Duke of York. Hang on. Let me just do something here. When I was in New York, I went to a museum all about the history of New York, so I do understand the 5 boroughs and all that. Why is New York named New York? The English took over the colony in 1664 during the Second Anglo-Dutch War. They changed the name to New York to honour the Duke of York. Okay, so it's not named after York at all. You win, I lose. I'm happy to admit when I lose. I lose all the time. I'm a loser, basically. I'm a loser, baby. So why don't you kill me? Don't kill me. I've never listened to Kanye or Beyonce. Beyonce. I'm not really much of a fan, but like I say, I listened to that Kanye West album. It's damn good. He's an interesting character, isn't he? He's an absolute ego. Definitely the sort of person that I am not drawn to at all. And yet, some of my favourite kind of rock star guys of all time, whether it be Johnny Rotten or Jim Morrison or John Lennon, they all had something about them where they thought they were, you know, I think Kanye West is just going along with that, isn't he? Where was Bowie's Another Day? Where are we now? Where are we now? God, I love that song. Remember when that song was released? People gave it so much flack. Oh, this is really dull, this is very boring. And I just thought, this song is genius. Absolute genius. For me, where was Black Star? Right, finally, someone's mentioning the question I asked. Top album of the 50s is probably a musical soundtrack like South Pacific or Carousel. Okay, we'll bear that in mind. Grace is a great album and possibly best for that decade. I'd vote for Road to Freedom and Dummy by Portishead. I've got to say, the interesting thing there is I bought Grace by Jeff Buckley and Portishead Dummy on the same day. And I brought both albums home. And I listened to both album oboes. I didn't listen to both oboes, listened to both elbows. I listened to both albums that day with the curtains closed, just in the dark, just lying on my bed. And that was one of the greatest experiences of my life. The accidental good fortune of listening to two of the greatest albums of all time in quick succession. I mean, I can't really choose between them. Dummy by Portishead is a work of majesty. But I think Grace by Jeff Buckley might be the best album of all time. Lemonhead's Shame About Ray. The interesting thing about Lemonhead's Shame About Ray is when I released a single when I was 19, 20, and the music press compared me to the Lemonheads. They said I had the nonchalant ease of the Lemonheads. I wasn't even into the Lemonheads at the time. It's weird when you get compared. I also got compared to the Wonder Stuff, who I never listened to. And always very much compared to Blur, who I did listen to. What did they do with the arse on the cover of Is This It? I just hope that arse is a female's arse. You know, when you get someone goes, actually, it was a bloke. We just shaved his arse. And you think, bugger, I've been eyeing up that bloke's arse all this time. What is the best album released on a Thursday? Is that Little Britain? What's the best album? If you'd asked me on a Tuesday... Mike G remembers hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time. And you remembered Simon Amstell's name. He was quite good, wasn't he? Top album of the 50s, Elvis. Mike G thinks it's going to be Elvis. Mr. Floyd thinks it's going to be South Pacific or Carousel. Evil White Clown Punk. He believes the best album of all time is Kiss Alive. Kiss Alive 2. Peter Frampton's. Oh, he's always trying to do that to me, you know. Peter Frampton Comes Alive. Frampton Comes Alive. Why am I struggling to say that? So I get it, Evil White Clown Punk. Any album with live or alive in the title. Any list of Blood on the Tracks in it is fucked. You're a contrary man, aren't you? Blood on the Tracks is so magnificent that I could use it as a coaster to serve a glass of champagne to the Queen. Hi, I'm McBride. 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 Neutral Milk Hotel is definitely worth that spot and is a must listen. There you go. There you go. So I was unsure about this Neutral Milk Hotel business, but you rate it. You rate it. Julino gives us the link here to Kanye West singing Bohemian Rhapsody at Glastonbury. That was ridiculous. What the hell was he thinking? If anyone had any anti-Kanye West feelings, then just watching this link will just justify everything. He has got talent. He has. Who's Next does have some great songs in it, Mr. Floyd. It does. It does indeed. And I know we've disagreed in the past over which is the best Stones album. I think I'd still go for Exile on Main Street. But in the past, I always stuck up for Beggar's Banquet. I've got a real soft spot for Beggar's Banquet. And also, this is interesting. Talking to me or chewing a brick. Either way, you'll lose your teeth. That's the bit I was missing off the end. I'm doing that. Nearly 500 now, Cease. Yeah, but not quite, Mr. Floyd. On the negative, on the downward spiral. I wonder where the downward spiral featured. And we're running out of comments. Josh, thank you for staying to the end of the video. I do appreciate it. I think you should do a first reaction to Neutral Milk Hotel's top album. It might get some traction like your King Giz videos did. Do you reckon? Are there a lot of Neutral Milk Hotel fans out there? Why are they called Neutral Milk? Well, why King Gizzard called? I know why King Gizzard called what they're called. It's because one of the band members wanted to call them Gizzard Gizzard, and one of them wanted to call them the Lizard King, and it was a compromise. Why are they called Neutral Milk Hotel? Ah, and you're the one who wants to see me listen to Tame Impala. As for the 50s, you're gonna go for Miles Davis. You're going to go for Miles, and I'm pronouncing Surf Jan Stevens' name wrong, lads. And someone here wants a first impression of Arcade Fire. How have I gone this long without knowing anything about Arcade Fire? I've managed it though. So we've got Miles Davis, Elvis, and South Pacific Carousel for the best 50s album. What would I pick? I think they're going to go for Elvis. No. A Kind of Blue, Miles Davis. I would go for A Kind of Blue, Miles Davis. A Kind of Blue, Miles Davis would be in my top 10. Of all time. Let's have a look. My Mercenaries. 1950s. The greatest album of the 1950s was A Kind of Blue. A Kind of Blue. If you think that the Beatles kind of invented the concept of the album, Beatles and the Beach Boys and Bob Dylan, whoever, but the Beatles, I suppose in the 50s you're talking mainly jazz, aren't you? A Kind of Blue. I love that album. I love that album. Time Out, Dave Brubeck. I love that album. Elvis, number 4, great album. Blue Train, I own that, love it. Frank Sinatra, Little Richard. That's fair enough. I think A Kind of Blue. It makes sense for A Kind of Blue to be number 1, doesn't it, for the 50s? They got 40s? They didn't have albums in the 40s, did they? Let's have a look at the 40s on Mercenaries. Number 1, best album of the 40s is Woody Guthrie, Dust Bowl Ballads. Django Reinhardt, Charlie Parker. The score for Fantasia, Disney. My Mercenaries, thank you for watching. I just wanted to give you some feedback and show that I care. And I'm one of the YouTubers, it's worth commenting on my videos because I read every comment. And even if I don't type a reply, you can tell that I'm thinking about you. We are like that more than ever before, unless we're not like that, in which case we're not like that. Okay? Thank you, my Mercenaries. Over and